some of the best stories of competition come out of Olympics and sporting stories. And it's good to listen to them and watch them. And I think it's all fun. And I got a couple little stories I'm going to share from the two startups that I founded. I've been in additional startups, but I think these are two interesting stories. And before I get into our story, I think it's worthwhile talking about what is competitive advantage from my viewpoint. And I've highlighted, 6 different key categories that I think you can integrate into your company, into your competitive advantage. And I think everybody has heard of patents. For many businesses, patents make sense. And for many other businesses, actually, patents do not make sense. And if you think patents are important for your business, usually hardware business are more sensitive to patents than software businesses. I would highly recommend that you deeply educate yourself before you hire anybody. There's a tremendous amount of information on the web about filing patents and how you can do it. And you can actually file patents yourself. I filed at Albio, our first company. I filed the first 3 patents myself, and I wrote them up in something that's called a provisional patent. And there's search tools, etc. So before you engage an attorney, always do some diligence up front. I think another area is classic is products. Products that work better is the bread and butter of most startups. You definitely need to realize that if you're differentiated on product, investors are going to ask, well, what happens when the competition catches up to you? So it's not one product, it's a process for developing products that's differentiated. How do you continually develop products that are ahead? So it's not one product, it's a stream of products that you got to think about if you're thinking about competitive advantage on the product side. Cost is also classic. Many investors do not like it if you lead with a cost competitive advantage. It's sort of the to the bottom of the drain kind of argument where they will say, well, you're just rushing to the bottom. So I would not lead with that. I would keep it as a secondary or tertiary advantage. If you do that, obviously it's fantastic. If you have something that's special on the cost front, it'll help you with your margining. Positioning is huge. The reality is that companies get locked into positions, and it's very difficult for them to break that barrier. Rolex watch is not going to drop down and do a cheap watch, and those positions allow you to counter and figure out where you want to play. I think Apple did an amazing job of positioning the iWatch to take out both the high end and that low end market by figuring out the right position as the market shifted. As technology provided a point of inflection for a change in the positioning strategy for those companies. So I like to think of the product pyramid when you think of positioning. A lot of people like to be at the top so they can defend, but there's plenty of good positions in the middle of the product pyramid also. Distribution is a great way to get a competitive advantage. If you can get your product in the front of more eyes, that's great. It's very rare to have a unique distribution model. If you think you have something, I would mention it. Friends, ambassadors, refer friends are all novel techniques that have been used, but it's pretty hard to really do something really novel on the competitive advantage front and distribution. In execution, that's where, my first company, Albio, we really excelled at execution. If you can get the product defined right the first time, built correctly the first time, and launched into the market, that's an enormous differentiator. You get weeks, months, years ahead of the competition. And when the competition tries to launch a product, if they do it wrong, you can pick up that wrong idea, spin it into yours, and launch it quicker maybe than they can even do it. So I love this one. It's super hard at the beginning when you haven't made a product to argue it. But if you have a team that has execution experience, I would highly recommend using execution as one of your competitive advantages. And I think this has always been one of the toughest parts for me, to communicate your competitive advantage, because these are all sort of soft things that are difficult at the beginning to communicate to an investor. And it is mostly talk at the beginning, and it requires a significant amount of work to turn it into reality. So you really need to get started on thinking about it, developing, and executing on your competitive advantage. And when you go out and talk to investors, you need to say it with conviction. They will sniff out if you start to back off and weaken on it. So I think as part of your pitch strategy, your communication strategy, this definitely will be a question everyone asks you, and you need to have a good, strong answer to come back with, when you're responding to the investors. So let's shift into my examples here. So Albio, I founded that company in 2004. Early stages of lighting technology transition from traditional bulbs and glass and filament to solid state, really offering numerous advantages from energy savings, maintenance savings to form factors. Company was founded in 2004, and I went back looking at all my old pitches, and this was a critical moment. It was 3 years into the company, so it's not exactly the start. And I was invited to the NREL, the Industrial Growth Forum. And this was the slide from my pitch there. I ended up coming in tied for second place. And you can see we filed a bunch of IP, and I also had an execution argument. We had a team who had built a lot. And it was a pivotal moment in the company. Coming in second place led to a super angel investing $1.2 million into the company that really drove us to delivering on an exponential growth rate plan. It was very exciting times there. So we used execution, a product. We had a superior product to our competitors. It was more efficient and brighter. And we had started filing patents. And as I mentioned, in the United States, you can write your own patent, a provisional patent. So, I did the extra work, looked up how to do it, filled out the forms, and filed the patent. And then you can look an investor in the eye and you can say, without a doubt, that you have IP that started and along the path. And although it might not be fully locked and granted, it's you're ahead of other companies that they're talking to that are still just thinking about filing patents. You've actually done something about it. So that was pretty exciting time for us. Now, Illumitex was in a different position. This was 10 years later, 2017. And it was a LED lighting product for horticulture to grow plants. The horticulture market is exploding. There's actually trillions of square feet of horticulture across the world. A light is one of the number one inputs to plants. And the more light, the better quality light you can put into plants, the better quality, flavor, taste the plants produce. And by 2017, in the lighting market, the competitive advantages had shifted. You couldn't rely on the same execution differentiators for building a product. So we added a digital layer, and this slide here was how we communicated our competitive advantage. We had a digital layer that was on top of the light fixture that would take pictures of every single plant every hour. We'd push those pictures to the cloud, and then we would use machine learning to do artificial intelligence on the plants to deliver actionable information to the farmer. So not only did you get a light fixture that helped you grow plants, but you got an intelligent layer that helped you make better decisions faster. And no one else had any idea similar to that. And we've raised over $10 million on this concept of adding a smart digital layer on top of the light fixture. So in 2017, although it was still a similar lighting market, we really shifted to a digital layer to differentiate ourselves from the competition. So, I think you have to think about it. Sometimes the competitive advantage stays the same throughout the life of the company. Sometimes it needs to pivot. And love to share these stories with you. If there's anything that you would like to learn more about, feel free to shoot me a question and I'd be happy to answer it. Thanks for your time and good luck.